Could we hear from someone from the department or Mr. Tolhurst to speak to some information that just came to light?
Hello.
So I hear you have an idea.
I do. I certainly have heard a lot about the objections to the transmission of some of the personal information that's necessary to complete the card. And as you've heard, the only reason that we do collect that and transmit that at all is to create this PDF file to be printed to produce the card. However, there might be another way to do that that I think is very technically feasible. And that would be basically to send something called an applet down to the user's web browser that would actually do the creation of the PDF file, basically print the card itself. This would eliminate the necessity to send the name, address, or any other personal information across the internet. It would all stay on the provider's computer and not disclose any personal information to any kind of hacking or breach or intercepting.
I think what some of the members of this committee just heard was magic.
Yeah, it's a little bit of technical magic. Basically, it means simply moving the technical process of creating that file to be printed off of the remote web server and onto the provider's computer. And it's basically answering Representative Stuckey's question from earlier, why don't we do it locally? Well, there probably is a way that we can do it locally, and without having to install software on the computer. There are some web technologies that allow us to move this function to that local computer.
Representative Sanderson and Senator Haskell and Representative Gatchell.
And in order to provide the safeguards for the department, would this window that opens up provide you one opportunity to print and then it goes away? Or do you have a double opportunity to print, making duplicate cards?
It would not really change the process from the way that it works right now. Right now, a provider could print an additional card, and occasionally probably has to if they have a printer malfunction. The real control over the credential is the special stock that is printed on, not so much the file that is printed. They're responsible for their inventory of that special paper.
And providers are accountable to that, with the amount that they have?
Senator Haskell?
In their request, then do they have to send you the non-identified information that you need to collect?
The information that is required to be collected would still be transmitted, but that is very generic information that is not really very useful.
So that's what they would transfer in order to...
That would be transferred, but the information that's of concern here would not be transferred across the internet ever.
What flips the switch for that applet, or does that sit right there on their computer all the time?
It would basically be sent to them along with the rest of the web page, just like all the little images and the text on the page.
So basically then, they are just simply going to be providing to you, and only to you, that non-descriptive information.
That's right. Zip code, provider, under 18, that sort of.
And they've got to have one transmission of that for every card they print.
Correct.
In order to make it match. Just want to make sure they're still going to get the information.
Representative Vashon?
My question was just answered.
All right. Any additional questions? Representative King?
An observation, and so it seems to me that we could pass this amendment and it would not interfere with the ability of the department to manage the process.
Seems to be the case. I wonder if we also do want to put in the other component that addressed some of the other concerns, which the department isn't doing, but I think some would express they might feel better in statute if we did also have a provision in there about storing that information as well. So I wonder if we might want to put that. So we have the piece about it being sent over the internet, but then there was also a discussion about storage of that information. That storage is not taking place, but some express they might feel more comfortable if that was just codified in statute, so that in the future someone else came along and said, you know, it'd be a really good idea is if we store this information that we've got it in statute, that can't happen. Any Any discussion, Representative McKean?
That sounds reasonable.
All right.
I'll make the motion, offer to pass as amended, the amendment being the information were provided by Representative Russell, further amended by comments that Senator Brakey.
All right. Is there a second? Second by Representative Hymanson, moved by Representative McKean. Any discussion on the pending motion? Representative Hymanson.
I just wanted to be clear, so essentially, the Department of Health and Human Services shall not require healthcare providers to send, store, or retain personally identifying patient information
I
over
think
the
that's the
internet.
intent.
That's the idea. Okay, thank you.
All right.
And again, this, for the purposes of all the people sitting in the room trying to follow along and on the internet, we're taking Representative Russell's amended language, and in my mind, we're strengthening it. And it seems to me that the work of the gentleman, where the terms contractors and others here, come to a good solution here today, so I hope we're going to pass this.
Representative Sanderson.
Thank you. I'm hearing some heavy sighs over here from Mr. Albert. Is there a concern with that motion that you think we need to address before we take a final vote on this?
Thank you, Representative Sanderson. My concern is the definition of personally identifiable information. This committee cannot control that definition. So to the extent that we identify name and date of birth, Representative Russell's information, I can control that.
Yeah.
I can't necessarily control, as the definition evolves, a personally identifiable
So,
information.
I think my understanding is, so that the amendment as it's currently lists name, address, and date of birth. And that's, I think, the intent of this committee that we'd like to keep those three things specified: name, address, date of birth, as what's considered for this bill as personal information. Representative Sanderson?
But date of birth is one of the components that they are required to collect.
No.
No.
No, all is being
But
treated
whether
as
they're over or
under.
under.
Right.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Can I ask?
Representative McKean?
So this is within the Medical Marijuana Act, right? Is there a definition? It doesn't refer back to another definition. Is there a definition, I guess, is there a definition of person identifying patient information within the Medical Marijuana Act?
No.
So is that a problem generally? So what is this, so what is personally identifying information in your mind?
I would look to the HIPAA laws, state and federal HIPAA laws for
Why?
that.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because I would look to the next statutory definition. If it's not, as a common practice, you would look if it's not defined within the law, the act you're working within, you would look to a logical act to identify the definition
Okay,
for a term.
So HIPAA has a definition of personal health information, PHI, and this says personally identifying patient information. And there's also state law. There's a state confidentiality law that might have a different definition than HIPAA. I think they're relatively aligned. I'm just wondering whether or not we need to go up with whether it's part of whether for purposes of drafting this, we need to go up with the definition of person identifying patient information for the purposes of the medical marijuana.
So I guess as I'm looking at this, I see two ways we can proceed. We can either create a definition on what constitutes person identifying information, we can put our analyst on that, or we could strike out that language and just have it say name, address, date of birth, which is what we're trying to get at anyway. Senator Haskell.
Wonder if it might be as simple as identifying the type of patient's a medical marijuana patient, and then use that definition within this statute. Then it's not transferable to other patient data. That's a possibility.
Representative Sanderson.
Thank you. Senator and I are back on the same page again. We veered off a little bit. But, yeah, I think it has to be very clear that it applies to the Medical Marijuana Act, because then you have in statute somewhere that Department of Health and Human Services is not required to send personally identifying information. If that were required, the whole billing system would shut down. So, that doesn't work out so well, so it does need to be very clear that it applies to this act only, and for the certification of a new patient only, or certification of a patient.
Or renewal.
Or, yes.
Representative Ashland.
Okay, so for the reporting of the information that the department wants, of zip code over 18 and under 18, in keeping that data for however many years, you're gonna have a problem with the under 18 as they age to be the over 18. So wouldn't you want their birth year? So that, I don't know what why the department's keeping that information. But if you wanted to keep track of who was the under 18 users, I would think that you would actually have to have their birth year so that you could track who actually was over 18 as they age.
Representative Ashland, I'm only concerned about that at the point in time. So I'm not concerned about the tracking that individual over time. It's at that point in time, are they either over or under 18?
Representative Sanderson.
For the benefit of the new committee members too, the only reason the department is even tracking that information is because they have been legislatively directed to collect that so they can report back to us on the program.
Representative Bernstein.
Just one question, do the cards have an expiration? Is it just for 1 year?
Yes.
1 year, okay.
Up to 1 year.
Up to 1 year.
Right. I'm ready to vote too, so seeing no objection, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the motion, of Representative Gattin's motion, to pass as amended, please raise your hand. All opposed? All right, we've got a unanimous vote. All right.
One down.
Thank you very much for everyone who was able to provide answers for us to that. Okay, so here's what I think. We've missed lunch, so we're going to take a 20-minute break so that members, so we can grab lunch, bring it back. We're going to do a very quick chairs and leads meeting about how we want to proceed on some of these issues. So we'll be, time right now is 12. Well, it's 12:50, so we'll be back out. Plan to be back out.